Hi, I'm Graham Howe and I'm a freelance lighting cameraman for Cameraman Online Limited. Throughout my career I've been lucky enough to work on a variety of different areas of the industry, from sport, broadcast, corporate, to more recently, podcasts. I've been really fortunate to work for a company called Goalhanger, who specifically I work on their football content. I've met some fantastic people, I've travelled all around the world, and the best thing is they like it to look as nice as I do. The good thing with podcasts is it's almost a throwback to the old days of filming TV interviews. More effort is going into filming a podcast than less, and it's one of the areas that I really enjoy working on, framing them nicely, lighting them nicely, and taking a bit of time to actually enjoy the process. When I get the call for a podcast, even if it's from a returning client, the first thing I always need to know is how many people are going to be involved, basically how many people are going to be on screen. And then the second thing I need to know is the space. I need to know if the room's well lit. Is it going to be big enough for what we need? So they're all considerations that before you turn up on location, it's always good to just have these things in the back of your mind so you're not caught out. Once I've got that information about the location and the amount of people involved, I can then start to make the decisions about the amount of kit that I require, the amount of lights that I need, the amount of cameras that I need, and most importantly for a podcast, the amount of mics that I need. For me, I use Sony cameras. This is based upon reliability and quality of image. So when it comes to cameras, I personally always like to have one more camera than we have people that we're filming. And that's because I always like to have a safety wide shot. I always like this shot because if there's a problem with the person that you're filming and they maybe lean out of their shot, it's good to have a wide shot that just covers you so you've not got a gap. The exact cameras that I would use on a two-person podcast would be the FX6 as my safety wide and also my audio camera, and two FX3s as my close-ups. When it comes to lenses, I would possibly match the two lenses on the two singles, so it would be something like 250mm to 85mm. And with the wide shot, I would tend to use something like a 16 to 35, gives me a decent focal length to work with, but most importantly, it gives me that safety coverage that I need. Also, when it comes to colour profiles, that's something you've got to be aware of. I personally go with two. It's either S-Log3 Cine or S-Cinetone. So why would I use S-Log3 Cine as a colour profile? Well, it's fantastic if you've got the time and money to have a full edit with a grade. It also has a really wide dynamic range, allowing you to get the detail in the highlights as well as the shadows. The other option that I would probably go for is S-Cinetone. It's another colour profile straight out of the camera. It is really cinematic, but the beauty of it is you can take it straight into an edit without even having to grade. So final checks on a multi-camera podcast, 4K or HD. Personally, where I can, I'd always go 4K. It just gives you a little bit more scope in the edit. And then check all your cameras are on the same frame rate. 25 if you're in the UK, Europe, 30 if you're in the States. And if you're going cinematic, 24. But one thing I'm going to implore to you now, make sure that all your cameras are set up exactly the same. As I said earlier, it's very important that you actually find out where you're filming. This will help you pick the right lights for your particular shoot. You may need just one light. Unfortunately, you may need 4, 5, 6 lights. Unless you know the room that you're filming in though, you'll never know. When I'm shooting a typical two-person podcast, I tend to bring 3 lights to actually light the people, and then I'll have 1 or 2 lights in the background just to sort of add effects or maybe lift dark areas. Typically, if I'm lighting a podcast, I will go with a key light that's situated between the 2 people that are talking. That light will have a dome light on it that diffuses the light but also spreads it evenly on both people, giving us a nice natural look but also an even look on both of the faces. Once I've set up and I'm happy with the key light, I then look to the backlights. I like to use a backlight because it helps give separation between the subject and the background. If you've got the time, the budget, and the available lights, have a look at your background. You may be able to tweak some little areas that perhaps may look a bit dull. I personally always look at my background and see if there's something I can add there just to lift it, just to make it a little bit more interesting, rather than just a dull, mushy background. Once I'm happy with all aspects of the lighting, I go back to my cameras. That's when I want to start matching the colours, the white balance and the exposure. The first thing that I look to do is white balance. You can use the preset white balance if you want. I tend to find that going between different cameras, these can be slightly off. So I personally, old school, I do a manual white balance. One thing to be aware of when doing a white balance is don't be put off by the numbers that come up on the camera. Each camera will be slightly different. So if one camera says 5.6 and one says 5.7, go with your gut. If you've done a white balance on individual cameras using the same light source, even if the numbers vary, your images will probably look the same. When I'm happy with the white balance, the next thing that I'll look at is getting people to sit in for me and try and match the exposures. I think the best and safest way to do this is to use the zebra function. The zebras show you exactly where the hotspots are on your images, and you can look at two people sat opposite each other. And if the zebras look the same on the two people, you know that you're pretty much exposed at the same level. In my opinion, zebras are a really important tool to use. I think it's something that if you can get your head around what you're looking at, can really make your images match really well. So once I'm happy with the exposure and the colour, you then have to go back to looking at your framing. I tend to shoot the singles the same size. This is so they cut together nicely. You don't have one shot that's a big close-up and one shot that's a mid-shot. And if you shoot in 4K, you've got the ability to crop in if you need to anyway. And your wide shot comes in very handy now because it gives you somewhere to cut between just to break up two individual shots. Podcasts are very different to normal TV in that we don't hide the mics. The mics like these tend to be in shot the whole way through. Because podcast mics can be quite big, when you're at the point of framing, just consider your mic position. It's very important so that you don't end up blocking the person with the mic. Also, it's worth keeping an eye on your close-ups because whilst you're filming, people do tend to move around a lot and can end up blocking themselves behind the mic. Something that I've noticed that you need to consider with a podcast mic is it's fixed on a table. So if somebody were to move away from the mic, you can lose audio quality. I always have a backup lapel mic. This just gives me the confidence in the edit that the audio is there. Try hiding the lapel mic, of course, but just be mindful, it's a podcast and people tend to be a lot more forgiving about seeing mics in shot. So now we're happy with the cameras, we're happy with our lighting, and we're happy with our audio. The checklist is complete. Hit record.